Marianne is the president of the Foundation for Enterprise Development, the FED, which creates and sponsors interdisciplinary research and multimedia education programs that advance entrepreneurial, innovative, and shared ownership models. She has produced 2 publicly broadcasted and award-winning documentary films, We the Owners and The Kitchenistas of National City. They capture stories of social entrepreneurs across industries and in community health. She has more than 25 years of experience in technology management and commercialization and is a judge on numerous innovation competitions, including the J.M. Kaplan Innovation Prize, the MIT Inclusive Innovation Prize, and the MacArthur Foundation's 100 and Change. Marianne's talk is entitled, From Employee to Owner, Could This Be a Solution to Women's Income Inequality? Thank you.
All right, hello, good afternoon. So I'm Marianne. I've come in from San Diego. I'm visiting the University of Michigan with my family, and that includes programs at engineering and the Center for Entrepreneurship. And so the timing worked out perfectly to participate in this. And I'm here to share something I'm very passionate about, shared ownership. And just because I'm the last speaker, what we're going to do a little differently is we're going to start with a trailer of the film that I produced called We the Owners, and this will be a few minutes, and then I'll come back.
My name is Michael Miller. I go by Miller at the brewery. I'm 37 years old. I work for a New Belgium brewing company. I treat my job like it's my own business.
We believe in ownership in the United States. We believe in individual responsibility. And we want people to own the things that are core to their existence. But somehow or other we forgot to extend that to the workplace.
My name is Carlos Crabtree. I work as a project executive at DPR Construction.
DPR Construction is a national builder focused on primarily technical market sectors.
We talked a little bit about the culture and how it would operate, that it would be innovative and different from the traditional construction company.
My name's Wade Andrews. I'm a co-owner of Namaste Solar and also a residential lead installer.
Everything is interconnected, everything is interdependent, and that's really the approach that we bring to our business, that the community, the economy, the environment, they are all connected.
The whole thrust of science is to make the capital worker endlessly and progressively more productive.
The combination of open book management, employee ownership, and what we call high involvement culture, that's an incredibly powerful thing.
Because I'm an owner in New Belgium and there's open book management, that I'm able to do this and do a $500,000 transaction. You know, a warehouse worker, a dock, you know, a forklift driver is doing this.
The data's in that it's a piece of the equation that can help your company be successful. And there's a gap, in my opinion, right now in between that being taught in business schools and the need for that in business schools.
I just can't imagine making an argument that freedom is not the ultimate end game and empowerment. There's no way that that's not the right answer.
I don't think there's a reason to feel like you're giving up control so much as you're collaborating with your co-workers to build something that's even more.
We're not putting gold bricks in our basement. All the money is coming back into this business, and we want you guys to see where that money is going to.
I think American business has come through a serious crisis. Wages have become relatively flat. We need to think about what kinds of corporate organizations are likely to create jobs that will stay in the United States and create stable employment.
Capitalism has a problem. It's not that capitalism is wrong, but rather capitalism is right. And the problem is that there aren't enough capitalists.
There are examples where employee ownership wasn't a good fit. It's a two-way equation. The employee has to want to be empowered, have an ownership mentality.
We need to start thinking about the kids and the grandkids, and what's going to happen to them if we don't do something different.
It's the security factor. It's the fact that I know my company is going to work hard for each other, and that's what's going to secure the future for myself and my family.
If everybody feels that sense of pride and responsibility, we can change the world and do great things.
Everybody then has the same data, same information, knows how to play it, all right, knows where they fit in, knows how they make a difference. But at the end of the day, can throw their fist up in the air and say, yeah, I made it, I got it. I didn't get it alone, but I got it with everybody else.
When I think about employee ownership, I think it's about a culture of responsibility, a culture where people feel like taking care of their own future is an opportunity that is presented to them, and then it's up to them to take advantage of that opportunity.
Just take a moment and think about what you saw, what you heard, and were these just employees? Is there something different? So what does it mean to be an owner? These are employee owners. And it's part capital and it's part culture. So the capital side is financial capital. These companies that have employee ownership, they're giving capital ownership to their employees. You have a financial stake. And I'll get back to that. But it's very simple. You have a financial stake. So, okay, I'm an owner. But it's the culture of shared ownership that's essential. So what is that? Well, we heard some of it in just this short trailer. So you heard open book management and something about transparency. So you're going to get financial information. You're going to know how your job fits into the rest. And you're going to know how you make a difference. There's a division of labor. People have responsibilities. But you don't have to climb a corporate ladder to have influence. It's much more flat type of organizations. Decisions are pushed down to the lowest level. There's a responsibility and accountability for making money. We have to make money. You have to be profitable. And there's competition. There's competition in these kinds of organizations, and it's a competitive environment in the marketplace. But there's also controls so there's not excessive risk-taking. And why? Because you're owners. You're all in it together. And there's dilution, stock dilution. And it happens, and it's not the end of the world. As a company grows and it's profitable, your percentage of your shares go down, but your wealth increases. And that's the dynamic that you have in a shared ownership culture. So what's my personal story here? Why am I so passionate about this topic? And in part, it's because I lived it. But I didn't come out of the womb caring about employee ownership, and far from it. So I have an engineering degree. I went to grad school, business degree, and I worked in the environment. My construct for social impact was saving the environment, and it still is. I'm passionate about that. And why? Because if we have a healthy environment, we have a healthy society. And so the people side of that equation weaved into social impact that way for me. And so that was my career and my focus. And then in 2000, and I was early 30s, some of you will have many years to go for that, but I was looking for something different, and I wanted to do something entrepreneurial, but I didn't want to start my own company. And so I joined an employee-owned company. And it was fascinating because everybody in that company that I would meet, no matter what the position in that company, they acted like an owner. There were 42,000 employee owners in that company. It's a multi-billion-dollar company. We cared because we owned, and we owned because we cared. It just turned out I joined a company called SAIC, and it was a company that my father had founded in 1969. But I had nothing to do with it until I was later in my career, and it changed my life. So for the last 10 years, I've been running a nonprofit to advance the research, the evidence associated with that research, the education, and the policy associated with broad-based employee ownership, and specifically helping entrepreneurial companies in their life journey to look at what works for them. And this is incredibly timely. And that's because capital ownership is increasingly the dominant source of wealth creation. Okay, so what does that mean? If you want to address income inequality, you can't get there through wages. You have to have some capital ownership. This is one example and only one example. But if you have capital ownership that is more inclusive of employees, we have one way of addressing the widening income inequality that we have. So as part of our educational programs, I wanted to find a way to help others understand, I guess obviously my passion for this, but if you haven't lived this, then how can you understand what this feels like? And so that's why we produced and distributed this film. It's aired on PBS, and it's now at hundreds of universities, and it's used by hundreds of companies in their employee training, not only here in the United States, but in 18 countries. It highlights 3 companies, which I'll mention briefly in a little bit. So let me step back and where is employee ownership? What is it? So it's broad-based employee ownership that we're really looking at. That can come in a lot of different ways, shares and stock options. I'll mention things like synthetic stock and phantom stock. You might have heard of cooperatives. But if you look broadly across just the United States, there's 9,000 companies that have broad-based employee ownership, and they're hidden in plain sight. Some have minority ownership. Southwest Airlines, Google, Procter & Gamble all have broad-based employee ownership. It's minority hold. So employees don't own the majority of the company. But there are 3,000 companies in the United States that are majority held, and those are privately held. The oldest company, actually, it was founded before there was even a country, the United States. It's the King Arthur Flour Company, is employee-owned company, and they're a benefits corporation. Innovative companies like W.L. Gore, the maker of Gore-Tex, they're an employee-owned company. Publix is the largest employee-owned company that we have in the United States, and they have 136,000 employee owners. And one of the companies that I show in the film is New Belgium Brewery, the maker of Fat Tire, that was co-founded by Kim Jordan. And she looked early on how to build in employee ownership, phased it in, and over 7 years, it's now 100% employee-owned. And how many of you are here from Michigan and know Zingerman's? So Zingerman's, you probably know, is a very unique culture, and they have a hybrid combination of employee ownership and definitely a culture of shared responsibility and ownership. Incredible company. If you haven't been to Zingerman's, you must go. Fantastic community of food businesses. All right, so what's the connection again with the impact on having shared ownership with employees? There's been about 100 research projects that have looked into this. And what we know is that there's the combination of having a financial stake, so that capital ownership as well as participation has positive impacts. For the firms, higher sales, growth, profitability, and productivity rates. There are lower turnover rates in these companies. What does it mean for the individual? For the individual, employee owners have 4 times less likely to be laid off during a recession. We have studies on the 2 last recessions and have done that comparison. So 4 times less likely to be laid off. But there's also the positive side, which that's a positive, but the greater wealth aspect. Employee owners based on research, have wages that are 5 to 12 times higher than employees in comparable peer non-employee-owned companies. That adds up. They also have 2.5 times more value in their retirement programs. That makes a difference. What we are lacking information on how this affects women. There is a study that has started to look specifically at the impacts of employee ownership in lower income, and we do know that women are more disproportionately represented in lower income and minority wages. So I think we're going to have some really interesting research come up in the next year. I will tell you, it was very hard for me to find a founder of an employee-owned company or a CEO that was female of an employee-owned company. The next time I make a film, I will promise to you, I will highlight and put forth more females in leadership roles, but I need you as part of that solution, which I will get to. So to be clear though, having a shared ownership culture with employees, having broad-based employee ownership, it's not a panacea. It doesn't work for everybody, it doesn't work for every company. Certainly in the long term, if you use ownership as a long-term wage concession, that won't work. If a company is just in a fatally flawed business model or in a shrinking industry, that's not when you apply employee ownership, and you never put your entire retirement into one nest egg of a single company. But it's great in terms of diversification. We do have some federal incentives. The Small Business Association, there's a number of organizations that can help you understand the federal tax incentives for this, but unfortunately we also have federal and state laws that actually narrow opportunities of ownership to executives and not encourage broad-based employee ownership to non-executives. We have research that's now engaged in that discussion and at the policy level. And many business owners and entrepreneurs don't even know to ask for employee ownership. And so we're also trying to address that. The Center for Entrepreneurship has efforts to educate their entrepreneurs and people that come to them. We have an institute, the Beyster Institute at UCSD, that does the same thing. Rutgers School of Management and Labor Relationships also has broad outreach. There's several major states, if you're interested in learning more, that have centers that can help you figure it out. But I would tell you, if you ever ask somebody, I want to understand about employee ownership, and they say, oh, it's simple, and it's a simple percentage, turn around. It is not simple, but it's worth taking the journey. It's really a culture, and it's a very dynamic culture, and in terms of how you develop that ownership culture and what percentage people have based on what value they're creating. And think about when people come in and out of a startup, they might be adding more value at some time, but then not later. And you need to have a very dynamic way of allocating ownership. But it's a really important time to think about it because in the United States, we're actually having one of the biggest business transitions of ownership that we've had. It's unprecedented. Many people call it the silver tsunami. And that's because there's an estimated number of over 200,000 businesses every year that will be changing their ownership. These people that are managing these closely held businesses and family-owned businesses will be retiring, and somebody's going to own those businesses or they're going to be shut down. I'd like it to be the employees. I'd like it to be in Main Street. And so I have a what if. I have a couple what ifs for you. And one of them is when you think about the economy and this big transition and how you want to play a role, the view, what if the view is not that we have an economy that's neatly divided between those that own the capital and the others that work for those who have that own the capital? So there isn't that divide. And the other is what if you're in a company, you're leading a company, financing a company, starting up a company? What if you can consider employee ownership? How might that look? Could you be the next person that I film? there's a saying that I'd like you to remember, and that is, none of us is as smart as all of us. These are the words that were written on a poster that hung in my father's office for decades. And it was given to him by my mother even before I was born. And now it hangs in my office. None of us is as smart as all of us. I'd like you to think about that going forward, and that ownership should not be an afterthought. Shared ownership is really a core value for fairness, and will give us more opportunities for all. So thank you. So are there any questions? Yes. So that's a great question. So the question was, in a company where where employees are owners, how does decision making happen, and how do they get done, and how do you participate in that? And also, I think, how do you have your own decisions so you can move things forward? And the kind of combination of that. So there's so many different types of these companies, and there is a division of labor. Don't think that there isn't, in that you may not have as clearly defined boxes, but you're going to have responsibility and accountability, and should have the information and the authority to get what you want to have done, and the teams that you need. And what you might find different, and overall it's amazingly efficient, although at first it doesn't seem efficient, is you ground truth things where a lot more people. So if you're in the marketing position, you'll ground truth something before you make a decision, maybe with sales, or maybe with someone who's making the product, so that you've got enough of the product before you end up marketing it. So there's a lot more communication in the grapevine that you use to help make these decisions. It's by no means consensus. There's a huge difference between consensus and participative. It's participative. But the interesting thing about decisions after they're made, and we know this from research, is these companies implement them much more efficiently because they're not being undermined, because more people were involved in the decisions from the beginning. Is that helpful? Okay. Any other questions? Hi, yes. Okay, great. So the question was what level of participation by the employees, and also the form of participation. Is it coming through an employee compensation program? So again, it does depend. The majority-owned companies that I mentioned are primarily coming through a stock program that is a trust, and that's the one that has the tax advantage. And that's called an employee stock ownership plan, an ESOP. It's not for startups. You have to have revenue, and it's administratively, it costs to put one in, but there's tax benefits. So that would be full participation, basically, because that is given to an employee on top of any other 401k or any other stock program that they might have. So those are high-level participation. And then the stock programs are a challenge. Stock programs, stock option programs, and so this isn't easy. So the stock options programs you would find at high-tech companies. Historically would push stock options. So you have the right to buy a stock or a stock share directly, and maybe it's vested over time. You get that value. That was very popular. We do see a retrenchment of that. A lot of that had to do with the expensing of stock options. In certain industries, you'll find it more used than others. And the ESPP programs, this is where, as a first-time employee or as an employee, you can buy stock. There's some great incentives to do that, and sometimes a company will loan you money to even help you buy that stock. We're seeing a range of participations, 20, 30%, some aggressive organizations through that kind of program. It's just not understood as much as it could be. And that said, it also changes when the economy changes. So if you don't have the cash to be involved in the stock program, you're not going to use it for that. And there's a preference for profit sharing. And that's what's important, is to be able to move these programs around and be very sensitive to the range of what your employees need, as well as what's happening in the economy. But we have a lot of good information we can share with you as well on that. Any other questions? Okay. You can go to wetheowners.org, no, that's .com, and social media if you want to learn more. And thank you so much. I really enjoyed being here.